Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Mitch Taco Bell. I'm the host for Tall Tales with Taco. If this is your first time watching the show, first of all, thanks for joining me. If this is the first time you are going to see Tim, Sluggo, Bleidistel, do me a favor, go back and watch part one. Because a few weeks ago, we had Sluggo on the show. Sluggo is an Aviate pilot, flies for a commercial airline right now. And he volunteered to go back to the war. Well, when he did, he went to Iraq as basically a FAC attached to an Iraqi army battalion or brigade, and they were slugging it out every single day with the Iraqi militia. It was 2 hours and maybe 30 minutes of conversation with him last time. It was riveting. I just sat here listening to his stories going, this is insane. And we're going to pick up where he left off, basically in the TV tower when they flattened a building with a thermonuclear bomb, thereabouts, almost close to it. But without further ado, I'd like to bring Sluggo on, and we can pick up where we left off last time. How you doing, brother? Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, happy Thanksgiving to you too, and thanks for having me on the show again.
Are you kidding? Part two. I've gotten so many messages saying, hey, when's Sluggo coming on for part two? Because at 2 hours and 30 minutes last time, I kind of ran you off. I'm like, we got to cut this off.
Yeah, it ran long. It ran long. Sorry about that.
No, it was actually perfect. I just put your episode up on Apple Podcast. So maybe some people on there will be able to catch it and enjoy it. Tonight will be part two, talking about you. Let's pick up where you left off. You were in Basrah.
Yep.
When we left off.
Okay, we were, we had just finished, like you said, having an unfortunate collateral damage incident when we, had no options but to do an airstrike on a building that had been completely militarized. And when the bomb hit it, it hit what was estimated later to be a large pallet full of plastic explosives, probably around 5,000 pounds. So that plus the 500-pounder going in, that's a bigger boom than a Moab, and it was pretty close to us.
Right.
And so, I talked about how we all got knocked down, and the blast wave was pretty destructive on our heads, and we all got concussed, and, I was had a hard time getting back to the Humvee that I got blown away from, and had to get a new headset because I had to rip the wires out of the old one because I didn't let go of it when I went the other way when the blast is. And so anyways, we had to meet with General Petraeus, and I mentioned that a little bit. And, I said at the time I thought I was going to be detained and, over that thing. And he was very supportive and wanted to make sure we're all okay, and if any of us needed any help or anything like that. And we're like, no, I would have asked. But, we went right back to the field. And so it was good to talk to him because we knew we had top cover at that point, which I did assume the whole time. But he, verified that I was, because of the circumstances we were under and the nature of our very flexible mission that was being changed and updated constantly, that we were under basic Geneva Convention minimums.
Right.
Which
but
is
if you go walking into that chow hall, though, that had to have been going in the back of your mind. I just destroyed this place.
Oh yeah, yeah, and it was like I have done the big no, and that is to cause inadvertently, of course, massive collateral damage, and with a huge ground medevac challenge for both sides, and it was a disaster. But even looking at it now, all these years later, when I'm older and hopefully wiser, given the same situation, even knowing what was going to happen, I had no choice. I would have
you
to.
had snipers shooting at you on top.
Oh yeah, we had snipers with the mortars are coming from that building. The elevated machine guns were in that building. There was no options here. They were killing us from that thing, and they turned it into a castle, and we had to hit it. So
now, do you think, in combination with the attack next to the mosque, where you you took out that 30 millimeter, whatever they had getting set up
Yeah,
next to
monster
the
gun.
mosque,
Yeah, yep.
which is in part one. If you guys go back in the description, you can listen to that story. So in combination with the elders and the imams and the mosque attack next to it and that building, do you think that just kind of finally was that the tipping point that woke them up to say, don't mess with the Marine anymore? That guy's gonna
Well,
kill you.
we had already been building a bit of a reputation, and they wouldn't tell me exactly what the English word was. I mean, seemed pretty simple to me. It was basically the Arab insult of we must not have had proper parents, and so it's like, okay, I can imagine what that is. And I don't know if I got too much into the Iraqi major that they had killed and sent a message to me with, but did we talk about that a whole lot?
No, I don't remember that.
Well, okay, just I'll hit it real quick in case we did. Well, one of the positions we were at very early in the battle for Basrah, we had a vehicle drive by near our position and throw a body out in a body
Oh,
bag.
yes,
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
remember
that
that.
thing. Okay, well, taken from that, that kind of started it, I think, where my response, instead of running away like they expected and another Arab officer to do, I told them the counter is true. With the Americans, you do something like that, I'm never leaving. I'm
Yeah,
killing all of you, and it really like emboldens us to be that much more aggressive and angry with them. That is beyond just a mission. Now it's like, oh no, yeah, watch this, kind of thing. And I lead with fires. That's the way I do things. And so I'm going to lead with a lot more now. And so we would, continue to do that. And they knew that also, we put it out as well, but then we practiced it as well as preached it, that if you shoot at us, whatever building you shot at us from is coming down.
mhm.
And right now, really, really fast. And my personal best was 6.5 minutes from the shot bouncing off the turret that I was standing next to, obviously aimed at me. I'm like, oh yeah, no. And we knew when we had a spotter goes, the flash came from, and he had it beaded right on this building. Got the Predator out there, and we hailed 2 F-16s that were buster into our position, and they never turned. Straight ahead, drop. Just tell me what your heading is, I'll work it out. And I need the
Right.
bomb on it right now. And this guy's obviously got his crosshairs on me, and that's really not good. And so 6.5 minutes, the bomb went through the top of that building.
Now, would you guys laze them? Would you laze the building for the guy to be
We
able to see, or?
we had the ability to do that, and we did do that a little bit with the Apaches, but in a complex urban target from altitude, especially at night when the laser would be effective, it's much better if I would use I'd have the guys point at where the muzzle flash came from,
Mhm.
and then I'd swing the Predator over there and take a look at it, and then get the grid off the Predator, because
Oh, okay, okay.
yeah. So
That
I'm
makes
looking.
sense.
So we're sort of using it, but I need that bomb within 2 or 3 feet of where I want it. Okay, this is like surgical,
Right.
because there's so much structure around you, so many other buildings with people in them, and it's like I cannot have this thing get close to the target. This
Mhm,
thing needs to bullseye every time. And with
mhm.
the GBUs, they're able to do that if you
That's
give them a
amazing.
good grid. Yeah, garbage in, garbage out, though. You don't give them a good grid, no. And I don't want a visual drop in an urban target if I can help it.
Right.
So, and we had great luck. Great luck. We had quite the system worked down. You keep hearing the same voices on the radio all the time. You're talking to the guy controlling the Predator and talking to the AWAC, and then you're dealing with the same squadrons again and again, and everybody starts knowing everybody pretty quick, and it becomes quite an effective machine. Everybody's playing ball. We all have the same goal.
Right.
But when we were getting ready to leave the TV station, to kind of fast forward to where we stopped,
Oh,
we were
let me show a picture of that. So people that are listening to this, there's a picture of their shot up building with a refueling truck
yeah, yeah.
that had gotten hit by mortars.
Yeah, that was after one of the many mortar attacks we suffered there.
And okay, so you're at that police station, and
Yeah,
then you guys are
so
heading out.
Yeah, and we're getting hit so much. It's like we got to move. We got to go somewhere where there's more overhead cover. We're just getting killed out here. And it was big enough though that we could keep moving, while as the day and the night went on. So if the mortars started bracketing us, we'd just move, which I know drives some mortar teams crazy. And they're always trying to catch you, but they're always following.
Do you guys have
So
a poo? What are those
the
deals?
radar.
Yeah, the radar to catch
We
the
did.
poo?
The British had one on a tower, and it wasn't that far from our location. We did not have one organic to our unit, but they couldn't see anything smaller than 81 millimeter. So I think they figured that out. The bad guys figured that out pretty quick, and they'd either hit us with 120s in rapid succession and then move the tube really fast and throw it in the back of a truck and drive away, or they'd just use the 60s all the time. And they had stolen so many of those, and then the Russians were giving them a bunch more through Iran, oddly enough.
Of course.
But yeah. So we were looking at this place called the post office, which it was a post office. And so it was a little ways away. So I took, I don't know, about half the guys and a contingent of the Iraqis and their leadership down there to scope it out, seeing if this was a better compound for us. We ultimately ended up not taking it because we realized the building's heavily damaged, and if it gets hit much more, the whole building's going to fall on us. And so that would be much more lethal than just a mortar. So we stayed there for an extended period of time though, and kind of moved into a couple of the mansion estates that were over there because they're walled, and we can fit 20, 30 vehicles in it and have like a little fort next to another little fort, kind of give us some resistance to just getting overrun physically. And we hear all this racket, and we get called that we're getting hit, and so the predators, we had 2 predators up and couldn't find where it was coming from, and they were doing the hit and run tactic with the mortars. Amazingly, like I mentioned before, amazingly proficient mortar crews. Our Marines were impressed with how close their first shot was.
Now, did you ever capture these guys, or
we did
find out?
We
I
did.
mean, where they got their training? Did they go for summer camp in Iran, or what did they do?
A lot of them had Iranian Quds Force guys with them, and all day, all month, all dead, we were fighting Iran. Okay, Iran was the ones funding it; they were the ones supplying it, and if anyone tells you Iran wasn't involved, they simply don't know what they're talking about. Iran was the reason the militia had the money and the munitions to hit us so much, and they were also paying about 5 times a school teacher's salary, between 5 and 10 times, depending on what town they were in, to go work for the militia. So they had an endless supply of fighters because they had a seemingly endless supply of money.
Well, how did they get so good with the mortars, though? I mean, because that is a skilled.
They have it looked to be European manufacturer. I wouldn't, if I was to guess, the country might rhyme with a country called France, but I'm not sure what country it came from. But they had computers that would basically ballistic prediction computers. They'd enter winds, temperature, data, grid, all that stuff, and from 10-digit grid to 10-digit grid, and it was kind of like our Pvt's computer, very similar. And they were very proficient with those.
That's amazing.
And their first round hit was, well, I've worked with the mortar crews in the U.S., and I think we ought to buy that thing if we can find it. It's like, our mortar guys were like, holy crap, that's really good.
And did you have a mortar team with you when you all were?
We had some guys that had been mortars, but the only actual mortar teams we had that were running with mortars were Iraqi.
How'd they do?
And they were reasonable. They were British trained, and they could be effective if given a chance. A lot of times we kept them moving, but because they're also troops. And if we need just manpower somewhere, they were the first guys we'd pick up and move with. The militia didn't give us too many mortar targets. They would either hang out with the general population, or they'd be constantly moving in vehicles. So they knew the threat from the air and from mortars was real, and that we could, if they stayed in place, we would kill them. So they weren't stupid. They were actually playing the game pretty well from their side for a while. So yeah, when we went back to the TV station, which we'd nicknamed Gulf 10 after the impact area off Cherry Point, because it kind of felt like an impact area in the wrong end of it.
Mhm.
It was time to move. We had to roll. It's like, guys, we're just eventually we're all going to get killed here. So we moved off, and then I talked about the terrible neighborhood we had to go through that we did not think we would survive the day, and did, and ended up right back at Golf 10 or the TV station when we finished. So we kind of did a lap, like a circle there. But then we had to start moving on, and so we hit a couple more neighborhoods just in the north end of Basrah, and one of them named 5 Mile Market, and that was the one where we would send groups up farther north with some of the towns, and then we'd come back south and then go back north because all of our logistics were getting stretched pretty thin, and they all seemed to be at the Iraqi fob next to the British airfield, and we kept having to return to that, and we were continually getting hit. They knew when we were coming and going, and it was just I wouldn't say cat and mouse. I would say the ambushes come and get ready, and we knew where we were going to get hit. So we'd constantly be changing our route. There's only so many roads in and out, though.
Right.
And
Do you think that was OPSEC problems on your side with the guys that were in the unit, or I mean, would they
yes
call
and
in on
no.
themselves?
A lot of times we didn't tell the troops what we were doing as far as where we were going, because we knew they would call ahead and tell Mama, hey, I'm going to be in the area. Maybe I can sneak away and see you for lunch or something. And they would do that kind of stuff. These are the Iraqis we're talking about. And so we wouldn't tell them. But as soon as we start heading south, there is only one place to go.
Yeah.
And that's to go, because we're almost out of gas. We're almost out of bullets, and they know where we're going. And so, yeah, we had a lot of problems with OPSEC. So what we would do is predict that it was going to happen, where it was going to happen. I'd throw the predators up, and we'd start looking for unusual activity or any kind of a setup or anything that could possibly construed to be a mortar or a rocket rail or any digging that had occurred or anything like that. And so they got less and less, and we started hitting more and more targets as we moved. And my goal was to always lean forward, so to speak, always be the one on the initiative, so that no matter where we were going, even if they thought they had prepared a site, when we come, they needed to be afraid of what we were going to do and how we were going to attack them before they even had a chance to attack us. And so that you continued to do that. So as we moved out of the center of Basra into the 5 Mile Market area, that was a particularly violent area. And they're the ones that, set off the IED that killed the transition team's first lieutenant. And
now, is this
so
a Shia area or?
Yeah, this Shia area. This is a Shia area. And so the thing was, the Iraqi army knew, because they found the wire and they watched where, looked to where it was headed, and they knew the neighborhood it went to, and actually went to the room that thing came up in. And there was a peephole in it, and we could see there was sighting sticks set out. So this thing was a traditional aimed IED. And
this is the one that killed the lieutenant, decapitated him, or?
No, it didn't decapitate him, but it killed the first lieutenant. It came through his vehicle, right through the door where he was sitting. There was nothing really we could do.
Right.
So, the merciful thing is it was quick,
Right.
But he was a great, one of the best young officers I ever met in my life. So I was, obviously very upset. So were the rest of the Marines, and the Iraqis liked the guy too. And so they were furious, and they looked at it as that they had failed to protect a guy that they respected. So they went through, kind of without us, they went through 5 Mile Market and took matters into their own hands at the leadership at the Iraqi officer level. It did not involve the Marines. And we kind of let nature take its course with that kind of thing. We're not going to get in between Iraqis and Iraqis.
Right.
So we backed off, and they assured us that this would not happen again. And after I saw 5 Mile Market the next day when we drove past it, I completely believe them. I don't think anything is coming out of that place for years. But anyway, so as we moved up, we started hitting all these little towns. And the first town we hit, we actually got the British, who had not come out from behind the wire this whole time, with all these battles, all this blood, all this death and suffering. We had not had the British come out of the wire yet. They had assisted us as they were allowed to within their parliamentary orders, which I get that. Everybody works for somebody, you know. And this time they came out in these large striker type vehicles, big British armored vehicles. And they had a bomb dog that was going to look for IEDs and all that. And yeah, 2 weeks later, they had a different dog. The first dog, when it was there, and we're all kind of looking at it going, a dog? What are you doing with the dog? You know, the dog was going through some houses and ended up chasing a bunch of chickens, and they lost track of the dog. It like ran off chasing chickens, you know, and I'm like, guys, whoever sold you that dog, take it, put it back. You know,
It's get a refund.
It's like, guys, come on, you know, we can't be having this kind of, you know, silly stuff going on. And they knew the dog was kind of a weak player, and so they ended up with a different dog that actually helped us out later and was pretty effective. So, you know, you got to go with what you can, you know. But going up these towns, we found the elders were all meeting with us very readily, to the point that they were like waiting for us as we approached their village.
Really?
And we think it was because of the reputation we had, that if anybody in their village takes a shot at us, they're going to bleed. The village is going to burn.
Yeah.
And I tell them that was true. They were correct in that assumption. And so one of the times we were coming back from a very successful meeting where the tribal leader totally, the whole thing, bought into it, became the leader, was responsible for the budget, took the contracts, turned the town back on, independent of, you know, the shutdown they'd had earlier because Saddam had cut all their money off. So everything was coming back to life there. And when we went back down that time, we were getting the last of the people out of the post office saying, forget it, we're not staying here. Let's go back to the TV station, pick up the last of the assets that we had there, and move out and just stop with that place. Because like I said, the entire unit wasn't going north. It was just, you know, kind of lead elements. And they were waiting for us. And it was not where we expected, which I know is, you know, the way that IEDs work. You never expect them. And one of the Iraqi Humvees that their middle level officer was in, he was a captain, good captain. He'd been pretty effective, but an Iraqi officer. Their AC had failed, and we were hitting well over 125 degrees that day.
Oof.
And so the different Humvees have different vintages. The windows and the door open different ways. Some of them kind of tilt out, some of them tilt forward, and then some of them slide
kind
down,
of
right. like no, not up and down, but back and forth, left and right. They're too heavy to go up and down, really. I did hear that there was a model like that, but we didn't have any of them. Most of ours slid back and forth, and the older ones would kind of hinge out and hinge back like a doggy door. Well, this one was a slider that the Iraqi officer had, and he had opened his window all the way and thought he's in the territory that we control now. Everything's fine. He's baking to death in there. It's so hot in that vehicle. So he opened the window, and apparently they had the window open on the other side too to get some ventilation in there. And they hit an IED, or they tripped one, and it was in the railing, aimed slightly uphill. So the entire, like, sitting in front of this cannon blast of this thing was right where the side of his head was. And we got the call that the driver can only see with one eye. There's blood everywhere. And he kept saying, I'm the only one alive. And that, let me in, because he didn't want to wait for our little slowdown at the gates to get into our territory, that, to stop people from rushing the gate. So we opened it for him, and this thing comes in, and we could see the blood was everywhere. It was all over the inside of the windshield and the windows. And he had taken his hand and kind of rubbed an area so he could see through the windscreen. And I was the first one over there to look at it and go, wait, what happened? And
Oof.
It literally took the guy's head clean off and had just splattered it all over the inside of the Humvee, and part of it had gone out the other window. And
Pretty instantaneous for the guy, though.
oh, he never
Yeah.
knew it hit him. He never knew
Yeah.
it hit him. But a lot of the blast hit the driver as well. And the guys in the back weren't dead. They were literally unconscious from the blast of the thing. For somehow the driver wasn't unconscious. Maybe because he was sitting next to the window. I don't know. Blast
Amazing.
waves do weird things. And so the Iraqis started immediately cleaning up the vehicle. And I remember talking with my captain, and I'm like, you know, I saw one of you guys with a window open the other day because the AC was weak. Let's get those Marines over here. They all need to take a look and help clean this up and truly understand in the deepest reaches of their mind what the consequences of making a comfort-based decision could be in a combat zone.
Right.
I don't want any of my guys to have their head taken off, and this could have been us. I don't know how it wasn't, because they were driving down the same road we were driving down in the same looking vehicle. So we did that. And, looking back on it, I understand that was probably the right move. But as the years have gone by, since my crew, we meet together every year still, they've mentioned that that's one of those things they really wish they could unsee. And I'm like,
yeah, but it made a difference. And if you brought some of them home, like Staff Sergeant
that's Sergeant Peckinpah.
Peckinpah,
good man
Peck
there.
here.
Good man there.
Yeah.
He was my driver a whole bunch of the times. A great mechanic too.
Well, you brought him home. He came home safe. It may not be fun at the time, but definitely
he's
has
got a bunch of,
to it.
He's got a bunch of beautiful kids now too. So when they come over and you see those kids running around, you're kind of like, I'm glad we made all the right moves over there.
Yeah.
Sounds like those kids be. So anyway, so we did that. And that was the last we went to that place. And so we moved out and we kept going north. And like I said, the elders were pretty willing to meet with us and kind of get on our good side, so to speak, get the deal so that their rival didn't get the deal.
Right.
And very little resistance, like very little. And the militia just kept running. They said the militia was here, but when you guys showed up, they split. They ran north, and they just kept running and running and running. And, I'd hear from the Iraqi officers going, yeah, we got them on the run. And I'm like, whoa, slow down. Don't think for a second they aren't trying to draw us thin and then hit us in the middle. Okay, there is thought and action into every single thing you see out there. These people are not panicking. The Quds Force guys aren't panicking, and they're the ones running the show.
What year was this? What year was this?
2008. 2008. Okay. And so I kept kind of telling them, we need to work on being a cool customer here and not get stretched out. And so, like all the great guys in the past have said, be very careful when you start dividing your forces.
Right.
Try not to. And anyway, so we would, kind of go as a single unit as much as we could. So they knew if they picked on 10 of our vehicles, they were going to get the other 400 up there within a couple of minutes, literally. And they're all armored and they're all running heavy guns in the turrets and they love to shoot things. So,
all I could think of is that old thing, my SPC or the 4th Platoon SPC had this on his door back at TBS in '88. And it said, the mission of the Marine Corps is to kill as many of the godless communist bastards and their subhuman immoral cohorts as possible with the least expenditure of munitions and to restore cave dwelling as a permanent way of residence in the former communist region. And I found it on the internet and they had kind of toned it down and then took it away from the Russians. But that could definitely apply with you guys and your fire missions over there.
I looked at it as, strength and compliance is a huge peaceful thing. If they know you're on the winning side, and remember how superstitious these guys are. All right. We kept winning. And, Petraeus had given me, as the overarching grand order, do not let this army ever lose a fight, not a single fight.
Really?
or we will never get out of this goddamn country. I mean, that was like his quote to me. And I was like, huh, okay, I got that, because I don't want to lose a single fight either, and because losing means you guys are getting killed,
Right.
And so we would keep moving. And the other thing is we'd been shot at so much by this time, like months of incoming, outgoing, all gauges of guns and everything else. We had seen mortars dud when mortars generally don't, and you lived another day. And we had seen, a lot of us got sick, and we kind of got over it. And that the time we got the most sick, was when I actually got the most worried I was going to lose my people, which is kind of an odd thought. But that's a whole nother story of well, that was when the Minister of Defense himself was down talking with us, the Iraqi one. And we were giving him the brief. Our transition team colonel was there, and we're all in a room at that shot up building in that previous picture where the big explosion was. And
Right.
we were mapping out this campaign I'm talking about, going to the north through all the little towns all the way up to Almara, and then we're going to mass with the U.S. Army and go into about basically Sadr City, kind of bypass the rest of Baghdad, go straight to Sadr City, and basically just wreck shop and get Makata al-Sadr and game over. So that was kind of the long range plan. And the Minister of Defense was there and wasn't the sharpest one of us when it came to ground tactics. I just leave it at that. So we would listen to his general direction, and then we would kind of change how we wanted to do it at our level so that it would, we'd survive.
I throw up a map real quick.
Yep.
Basrah was down there just north of Kuwait.
Yep.
And so you guys went north of that along the border?
Yeah, up the Route Tampa, the big boulevard going up there. It goes up the Shat al Arab River until we, and that, which of course then hits the Y going upstream of the Tigris and Euphrates.
Gotcha.
Al Medina is the town right there, if I remember right. But while we were doing this big overarching brief is when we got all the strategy down for this. And of course, we're hearing lots of things like, and the Anglico, which was us, the Anglico Marines need to be in the front. They need to be in the middle. They need to be in the back. They need to be everywhere. And whatever happens, bring in air support, because those are the biggest claws we got, and they're, they're very, they talk very colorful speech and stuff. And I will hand it to the Minister of Defense. He was good at that. Very dramatic guy. And he was saying that we were the dragon and that the air power was the claws and all this kind of weird, and I'm just like, okay.
We're Truppelhundens, man.
Hurry up, get out of the way. Yeah, so I can tell you, what order our vehicles are going to go in, and let's, what ammo we're taking. We need to get down to bolts and nuts here, But so while he's giving his big speech, and then my mind started daydreaming when he starts talking, like Shakespeare in there, and I'm just like, holy crap. And then I realized they had asked me a question, and they're all looking to me going, well, what did you think about your captain's behavior when he did that? And I'm like, oh, I didn't hear the question. So my response was, of course, I was there. I totally support the captain. I trust him in every decision he makes. He is basically an extension of me, and I have no qualms with what he did. And then I'm thinking, what the hell am I talking about? And then I'm looking behind the general, who's looking, and he's slowly nodding his head, and I'm trying to figure out why my stomach hurts so much and why I feel like I need about a bucket of Imodium in about an hour or less, because I can feel it coming. I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting sick. And everybody's getting sick. And the Marines outside are already sick. And I'm like, what is getting us sick? And I look, and the back wall of this little briefing room had been blown out. This building was full of holes. And there's a guy like 15 feet behind the minister, but outside, literally squatting and dropping right there. I mean, he's just taking a dump right there. And I'm just like shaking my head going, you gotta be kidding me, and then no toilet paper, and some, his hand off with a bottle of water in graphic detail. I'm just like, this is so disgusting. And so I'm like, okay, I need to go outside and deal with something, you know, and they're like, okay, well, we are done with you for now, you know. And so I walk out with my captain, and on the way out, I'm like, what the hell was I talking about in there? Because I was totally daydreaming, you know. And he goes, wait, forget that. Did you see the guy taking a you know, I'm like, yeah, I did. I go, I'm going to go rip his freaking head off right now, you
It
know.
was one of your Marines?
No, it was the Iraqi cook. And I'm like, and then I'm watching him flip our little bread with his left hand, which is the one I just watched him wipe himself with. And I'm like,
no wonder you're sick.
I think I know what's making us sick. You know, and so I grabbed the first Iraqi officer I could find, and I say, go straighten that cook out, or we're all going to die of dysentery, you know. And he just, you know, asked me why. What are you talking? You know, I tell him, and he just kind of laughs and he goes, we're in Iraq, and those are Iraqis. That's what do you want me to do? Change the culture? You know, this is the way it is. I'm like, oh my God.
I want him to cook with his right hand.
Are you kidding me? Yeah. But that was just, you know, this, if you can't do anything about it, you can't do anything about it, you know, move on. So, yeah, we were continually getting sick once in a while, like once every 2 weeks, you know, we'd be sick for a couple of days, and it's like, holy crap, you know. And so we of course talked to the guy about, I swear to God, if you touch anything we're eating with your left hand, I'm going to cut it off. You know, I was so mad at him, you know. Of course I wouldn't, but he didn't know that, you know.
So you're the dude that would drop a bomb on him,
and I'm like,
in the middle of the night.
Right? Yeah, I'm just like, stop touching things with your left hand, you filthy, you know. But whatever. So anyways, we got all the way up to the split of the rivers, you know, and entered, and I kind of grabbed the guys and pulled them aside. I go, guys, we're entering Mesopotamia. This is what you were taught in grade school. You know, this is the cradle of civilization, where it started, you know, the market, you know, enough excess farming goods that started a market economy. And then one thing led to another, and, you know, a cultural anthropologist can explain the rest, but this is where it started. And so we go to the intersection of these two rivers, and, you know, of course there's a little park right there saying, oh, this, you know, bragging about that Mesopotamia is in Iraq, the mother of everything, you know. And there's like this weird bristlecone pine, but it doesn't have needles,
right?
And it's completely dead, you know, except that there's like 2 leaves on the end of one of the branches, and the guy says every few years 2 flowers show up, and it doesn't seem to grow more than like an inch in a lifetime. And I'm like, what is that, you know? And so they call it Adam's tree, and there's like this little barrier around it and everything, and it is literally, I've never seen it before anywhere. I never saw another one, and it's right at the intersection of those 2 rivers, and it's guarded, you know. And I'm just like, that's weird, you know. So we went there, took pictures next to it and stuff like that. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to have like a biologist come back here and look at this thing, but I'm sure there's an explanation for that. But as we moved on, you know, we ended up having to split and go down the Euphrates, if I remember right. And that is, you know, basically turn left, go to Nazareth. And I'm like, why am I going to Nazareth? I don't want to go to Nazareth, you know. And it's like, well, the Australians are under the same duress that the Brits were, and the warlords are rising, and the militia is there now, and you need to get them out. So we started going over there. We get briefed that there's a whole nother Iraqi brigade there. I'm like, why can't they do anything about it? You know, why am we going there? And so we had a little lesson in Iraqi politics, which is a very complex field, by the way. And our column, led by the Iraqi army, was coming into the entrance highway, coming into Nazareth, as the resident Iraqi brigade column was coming out to meet us. Not friendly. And you know, they're both on the same team, supposedly, you know.
So Shia?
They're a mixed brigade, just like ours was. I would assume that they're mostly Shia. That might explain some of the friction, but because our leadership was mostly Sunni. So they approached each other, like two trains, passing on different tracks next to each other on this highway. And their lead turret gunner fired a burst into the street right in front of the lead Iraqi Humvee, kind of like shot across the bow.
Oh.
And they were not blanks. Okay. And so that first vehicle slammed on his brakes. All the doors opened for like the next 20 vehicles. And all of our Iraqi troops jumped out and climbed all over the vehicles of that brigade's Humvees and started beating the crap out of them. And of course, they're getting out of the Humvees, and it's basically a huge gang fight going on,
right?
With like hundreds of people involved.
Free for all in the middle of the street.
Yeah, in the middle of the street, everyone in Iraqi army uniforms. I don't know how you tell each other apart out there. And so our Marines were, I got my little imbiter on. The Marines are going, "Hey, I'm going in." I'm like, "No, you're not. You are not jumping in that briar patch." And I ordered everybody, stand down. Yeah. This is Iraqi culture at work. Let nature take its course here. We have no role here. Just stand by. Don't let anybody get killed, obviously, but let the Iraqi leadership function.
And it's kind of the same weird stuff that you already saw earlier, where after the mass deal, the enemy and you guys were doing Kazovac for everybody.
Right. Remember the first general orders: don't interfere with the culture.
Right.
Let the culture function. It's been doing so for over 10,000 years. We're not going to change it. Just let it function. And so a couple of the sergeant majors started, literally from both sides, the senior enlisted leadership, got in the middle of it. I mean, right in the middle, pulled out their AKs and fired the full magazine into the air. Both of them simultaneously. Everything stopped. Both of them climbed on top of the hoods of their Humvees, and they started berating everyone in Arabic about getting back in their vehicles and knock it off.
Good
and the reason why, because I don't really know what would have played out if we weren't there. The reason why is the Americans are watching. You are embarrassing yourselves in front of the Marine Corps. And so they were upset about that, and they all just went back into their vehicles. And my response was, when they asked me, "Do you have any input?" And I go, "Get that other brigade the hell out of here. If those idiots could do what they're supposed to do, I wouldn't even be here. I'm not supposed to be here." And so they did. They turned them around, and they basically blockaded the city and stopped all traffic, I think, including us. And they didn't want us in the city. And so with the transition team, lieutenant colonel, and mainly with the Iraqi general walking over there himself and having a talk with their colonel, you know how that probably went. He gave them 48 hours to rid the city of the militia, or we were going to come in and rid it for them. And they were all going to be disbanded, which meant not paid. So, yeah.
Oh, wow.
So in the meantime, we had to camp literally on the side of the road in a field, which is, we were used to that. Problem was, on one end of it was like a desert marsh, yet another desert swampy area, because the river's right there, and you're barely above the level of the river. And when it floods, everything floods, And some of the Iraqi soldiers started getting sick. And I'm like, "Yeah, if you check with a cook," and they're like, no. And they had these weird sores starting to get out and crazy high fevers spiking. And so I'm like, whoa, this looks like an old world disease, man. Tell me this isn't typhus. Just from, general knowledge of Googling it before we came over, I'm like, I've read about this. And so we grabbed the corpsman, who was, one of the best corpsmen I've ever had, even heard of. Young kid named Sepulveda. Superhuman. And his dad was an amazing man as well. Great leader, great guy. And, but anyways, the younger one was with us, and he looks at it, kind of talks with one of the other guys and goes, "That's typhoid fever." And we're like, "We got to move. We cannot get near this. We are all going to die." Because I know we're inoculated, but we're inoculated against the typhoid fever strain of 100 years ago in the U.S. That probably isn't what's in that marsh, because these people don't get inoculation. So these viruses have continued to be hosted by humans, and as you know, they change. And so I'm concerned of like, oh man, don't give us that. And so oddly enough, we moved and we medevaced all the sick Iraqi soldiers, and very few of them came back. So I don't think they fared very well. And not a single American got it. None of us got sick. So I think our immunities are still intact for at least typhoid, or one of us would have got it because we were helping carry these guys. I mean, we're like touching them. We're like in physical contact. It's super contagious. Yeah. And it's going to go through that brigade like a wildfire, And so they were, and I realized when I'm looking at the officers' reaction, they are scared of this, and I'm like, yeah, this is what happens when you grow up in a land with no shots, where these things will go through and kill a whole village, or most of it, kill all the children especially. So they're very, very cautious about this stuff. So as it turned out, we didn't have to actually go into Nasiriyah. The tribal leader in there apparently was afraid of us. Yeah, good reason. And so he got the whole tribe along with the Iraqi army to just wipe them out like 24 hours or more like it, even though they had 48. So in the meantime, I gave my guys a well-deserved day off as we're marooned in Nasiriyah until we were sure that we're not needed, and then we're going to go back to our original mission. And so I took them to this place called the Ziggurat, which one of the officers told us was there. And I don't know if Iraq is real open. It's basically the city of Ur, the birthplace of Abraham, or at least what they think it is. And it's a port city, or was, and it's it's hundreds of miles from the Persian Gulf. So the whole plate, it's so old that geological plate has changed altitude, and the seas have risen and fallen, more than once since then. And so it's crazy. But they had some uncoverings of it, and they dug some of it out. And so we walked through the ruins. It was absolutely fascinating. And it just kind of lets you know that this city is supposed to be at least 5,000 years old. And it may, if they continue to dig, it may reestablish the beginning of written history, because you can't run a bureaucracy without writing. And this place was in place that long ago. It's like, this didn't just pop up out of thin air. So that's just one of the things when you look at it, it's a very historical place, and they had just, a few months earlier had notified us that they had found and were open to like other people coming in and digging Babylon. They had found the ruins of Babylon by that time. And so there's a lot of archaeological stuff going on in the middle of all this chaos. So I'm like, that's not the job I would want as a grad student.
Did you have to deal with any looters or anybody that was caught stealing stuff all the time, or?
No, other than the normal, street riffraff that you always run into over there. Unless you count getting overcharged for a candy bar, a looter, because we got robbed. But yeah, there was one little cart that had some goodies on it, and the Marines hadn't seen that stuff in months. So they grabbed some, and it's like, I can't believe you paid that for a Snickers bar. But anyway, so off we went. It was kind of an interesting day that we'll always look back on as like, well, this might be something to look into at a later time. But we went back over and finished going through Medina, and one of the Iraqi units, we had kind of split our forces at that point a little bit. One of the Iraqi units had run into a problem with the militia, and the militia had escaped through a grove, a heavy, thick grove of palm trees. And there was a kind of a bend in the river and a few buildings, and they had run so that literally they had a river on three sides of them. And we're like, what, and why would they do that? But it wasn't an Anglo operation at that time. The Iraqis were insisting that they could do this by themselves on the ground with their troops, and that they didn't need us for this, that we were needed probably elsewhere. And so they didn't want to have us tied to it. So we're like, okay, run, they want to run their own operations. And, we had to put an Iraqi face on everything anyway and let the Iraqis lead. We could advise, but the Iraqis needed to lead, and I needed to support with the air. And they started to move into this, and a couple of them started yelling back, and we realized, and I was, like I said, we weren't there they didn't want us doing anything. I walked over to the general and said, "What the hell?" And he said that the whole place is wired, that the IEDs are up in the palm trees, aiming down and crosswise and bouncing up, and that it is a prepared slaughterhouse, and they're trying to draw you in. And I'm like, well, I'm not getting drawn in. I mean, we're not going there. The Marines are, we actually have some other tasking we got up the road. I don't have any time to give you. We're actually getting kind of bogged down with some other resistance we were actually experiencing up the road a little bit. And he's like, well, give me a good idea, man. How are we going to get through there? We can't just let them have a safe zone. And I'm like, kind of looking around, and like I'd said before, whenever you're in a situation where you don't know the answer, just think about it. Just clear your mind. Within 30 seconds or so, a solution will present itself if you just listen. And I'm like, I see this kid with a bunch of goats going by, and they got bells on, they're noisy. The guy goes, I can't think straight with all those damn goats. I'm like, hold it. Buy his herd of goats. Buy him. Have him stampede them through there. And set all that crap off, and then go through there. And that's the only way you're going to get through this thing alive. So they did. And it was, I don't know if I told you about this before, but it was like 4th of July 10 times over. I mean, there was goat entrails almost going into low orbit out of this grove. I mean, it was just crazy loud as all this is going off. We're all like going, holy crap, and anyways, and we think the last one went off, and we saw some goat pieces go out of sight into the smoke straight up, like at the speed of light. And the general goes, I'm not really hungry right now, and as he says this leg of a goat just boom, like 20 feet in front of us just lands. And I'm just like, ew.
Was it cooked? Was it
smoking? It was smoking, and I'm like, yeah, me neither. And so then he goes, tells the troops, go, and good grief. Yeah, they're walking through, and then we ended up kind of walking through just out of curiosity, walk through there, and they ended up with a small firefight in the buildings, and then the Iraqis tried to escape across the river. And, that's not surrendering, so they're going to get shot. Yeah. And so we let the Iraqi army do their thing, and fish in a barrel was the comparison they gave it to. But those guys didn't get away. But not very many people have had the experience of walking through a grove that's just been painted with goat, and it is disgusting.
How many goats do you think were swacked on that?
About 40. We had told the kid that if any of your goats survive, you can have them back for free. So he was all about it. He thought, he's only going to lose 10 goats. The whole herd was blasted. The kingdom come, and he was actually angry, but he got, that was a big payday for him. We gave him above market value, for each of those things. So,
right.
He was reasonably happy, but he was, I guess, just emotionally attached to at least one of them, I think. But yeah, it was gross.
Goat love Thursday.
Oh my God. Yeah, it was horrible. But yeah, so we kept moving up the river, and always cognizant that you are in an area that the Iraqis almost hold as to don't touch it. This is sacred stuff up here. This is, their bragging rights that they started the whole show, here. And so we were very cognizant of that. And when we did have to engage somebody, or we had a couple pockets of militia try and RPG ambush us, and well, they did. And we, our response to anything is to turn and go right at them and flank them, and everyone's trigger down and just blast them, and don't let up till it's over.
How many airstrikes do you think you called in on this segment going up there?
Well, I kind of divide the whole deployment into south of Baghdad and north of Baghdad. So I would say when I counted them, I personally did 26. And then I, was pushing them, as many of them I could, out to my teams, and each of them got some as well. And again, I would, if I had any concerns, I'd voice my concern. Other than that, it was my responsibility to eavesdrop on whatever they were doing. And just like higher headquarters treated me, I treated them, where silence is consent.
Yeah.
And if I had a problem, I'd speak up with it and tell them that's not a target. Get off it. Look for something else. But they were very good at the job, and I was an amazing support. Amazing support. I had a great crew, and even the additional crews they'd sent me. By this time, instead of the 2 crews, I had 5 extra 4-man crews with me, and they were all great, super guys.
Now, were you getting Predator support out of Balot?
That's what we were told. I really couldn't care less where they were coming from, but that's what we were told they were coming from. We just had it 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
For months. Yeah, it was awesome. But as we continued to move up, we ended up going finally to Al-Mara, south of Baghdad. And that was where the militia, we were intercepting everything they were putting out. That's where the militia was massing, and they were getting reinforced from Sadr City. And this is where they were going to draw the apparently Arab saying of draw a line in the sand that thou shalt not cross. And so was going to be the showdown. And so the army, our U.S. Army, started massing with us. And so, I have some pictures I have apparently misplaced, but of just almost endless columns of different kinds of vehicles lined up outside of the fob we were occupying, ready to roll with us whenever we got the word to go forward. And then we got the word through our Jundi, that were out in the local area with all the, all the stuff we talked about with false papers and everything. Mm-hmm. And they had told us that if you go to the soccer stadium, that you are going to get hundreds of rockets are going to be sighted in on you, and they're all going to get launched at the same time. And you guys are going to get wiped out, because the Katyusha rockets were, again, remarkably accurate. And if they aimed 100 rockets or more at our little fob that we were kind of quarantined in, we were going to bleed bad if this happened. And so it's like, that's my responsibility to make that stop, make that not happen. And so we had the Predators up, we're looking and looking and looking, and I handed it off to one of my other JTACs, and he called me into the vehicle pretty quick, and he goes, what are these? And I see these guys setting up these rectangular metal frames, and there's a whole bunch of long, skinny wooden boxes getting unloaded out of several bongo trucks right next to the soccer stadium. And they're setting these things up in rows. And then I noticed they have and I think in some of the pictures I've sent you of the different weapons caches, if you look carefully, if you have the ones I think, there's like a car, like when you're changing a tire on a car, they'll give you a scissor jack that you then twist the lug wrench in and it lifts the car up. They have scissor jacks welded into a frame of angle iron that's taken from bed frames, and they can very accurately aim these rocket launchers. It's very rudimentary, simple things.
Same deal where they put the washing machine timer on a battery and
yeah. And what they'll do is they'll aim them all, load them all up, and then they'll have a big timer on a series of car batteries. And they'll have a series of timers. So if any one of them fails, you're still going to get a bunch of rockets, and they set them all to go off at approximately the same time. And then they leave the area. So when you see the point of origination, there's nobody there. These things, these things were set up hours ago, and the people that set them up are long gone. Well, right now I'm looking at the Predator feed, and I'm seeing them being set up. And so they're like, let's get them. I'm like, no. Just slow down. I don't think all the rockets are there yet.
Follow them back to.
Yeah, I want to know where the rockets are coming from. I don't want to know where those trucks are getting loaded up, because they're not going to send you 100 trucks. They're going to send 10 trucks 10 times, and I want everything at that site. So when I hit it, it's all gone. And the people being there, they're the ones setting them up. I want to get them too. So we're going to time this. We're going to be, again, a cool customer here. We're going to just watch and document, write down everything you can. And trust me, you already have the green lights on. All right. Don't worry about it. But we're going to wait and hit them at the right time to do the most damage, because I don't want a single rocket coming into this fob. That's my responsibility to the rest of us, And so we're waiting and waiting and waiting. And finally the moment arrives, and we have a couple F-16s up there, and the Maverick won't come off the rail. when the guy tries to fire it. It called a hung fire. And so I'm like, get off. And I clear his wingman in there, and his wingman was traveling with bombs. He didn't have a Maverick. And I'm like, you're not bombing the soccer stadium, no, but I need you to get these guys. So what we did is we cleared them. I go, you can strafe this. All right. And we're going to send a bunch of Iraqi infantry at the speed of heat and a bunch of vehicles to this location. In the meantime, you need to kill everything moving with bullets. And so we did, I think, 5 runs. And I think on the 5th run, they're out of bullets. And
I was going to say, it doesn't take them long to get a Winchester on that thing.
No, but they had a little airspace stuff, and they only had about a 4-second trigger down each time. So they were kind of going, in little batches. And that was due to other things. We had helicopters in the area, and we still hadn't moved all the friendlies out. And when they fired from a distance in those things, from the Predator on the infrared, especially as wingman, it was like an area weapon. I don't know if that gun was just loose in that airplane or it was spraying all over the place. And I'm like, okay, yeah, you're going to have to get lower. Okay. And so we really limited his runs. And so we were kind of just working with what we had to work with. And so we got it done. We never got a single rocket on us. And the Iraqis went over there and just took over the whole soccer stadium as soon as they had blasted this one spot where all the militia was.
Did you guys get any secondaries from the rockets?
We got a few, but they don't necessarily go off high order. What'll happen is you'll set the motor off, and the thing will spin around like one of those whirly gigs at 4th of July, and all sorts of crazy stuff starts happening. But mostly you just destroy them, and they burn like a piece of firewood. It's kind of odd. But anyway, so they confiscated everything that was there. And, so then we went out there and took a look, and we actually confiscated 3 T-72 tanks as well that were there. And so we just took all this, and every time we'd have a big weapons cache we'd uncover and things like that. These were inspected, inventoried, and sent straight to Baghdad into the Iraqi army's armory. So they were getting more and more well reinforced and well supplied as we went up the river here. And so then we got called down to a small little town. It was actually south of Al-Mara that we kept getting intel that there was a ton of stuff buried that was a real threat to us. And at that point, we uncovered very large artillery pieces that were designed to kill MRAPs. And they technically could kill an Abrams tank. So these are, it was the biggest gun I've ever seen, that wasn't like on a ship or something, and I'm like, what is this thing? And it was a muzzle brake deal, so the muzzle, takes the recoil, and big shock absorbers left and right. The barrel itself was over 12 feet long, and it shot these cartridges, these rounds that were, with our Geiger counter on them, were actually hot. So there's depleted uranium in them. Armor-piercing, incendiary, anti-tank rounds that were 37 millimeter. I never knew anybody made a 37 millimeter. I'd heard, well, apparently our shit is over there, because this one had Russian writing all over it. And, I'm familiar with the 40 millimeter Bofors, and things like that. But, this was big item. There you go. Yeah. Well, sorta.
So
it's about that. Okay, it's different than that. It was about that diameter, obviously the same millimeter, but it was about 2.5 times as long in the cartridge.
So this is a 37 millimeter. This is trench art from World War I that my grandfather had.
All right.
And that's the tank that they shot it out of. But
okay, if you take that cartridge. If you take that cartridge and make it, give it a big shoulder as it goes backwards to make it a bigger diameter, and then stretch it about another 10 inches, that was the cartridges we were finding.
Wow.
And they were unknown to us. I'd never seen them. And I'm like, this is a very heavy weapon.
Yeah.
And so we, of course, sent digital pictures of it, off. And we were told that is going to kill us if they ever put one of those together. Dead meat, that thing will go right through an MRAP. And so luckily we found it. And of course, the Iraqi army was very enthusiastic about acquiring this thing. And so we, had that thing loaded up. But right north of there, we got hit. Okay, we got ambushed. And, you've heard Dishka machine guns go on, the Russian stuff, even the heavy stuff.
The 51 millimeter.
Yeah, the 51. And then or 51 caliber, and then we're used to what our 50 cal sounds like. And you get it, it kind of has a certain twang to it. And when your forces are engaging, because you can hear the 50 cals go off. And that my Marines over there in a firefight, I can hear it. And then you hear the Russian stuff fire back. And when this happens week in, week out, you start being able to pick out the noise. And in this particular instance, we're getting shot at with an American 50 cal, and I'm like, God's sakes, where the hell is that coming from? And so luckily the lead elements had already dismounted and run into the structure, and very quickly found it, grenaded the room it was in, and confiscated the weapon. They bring it down, and it is an American 50 cal that the militia had. And so, of course, I'm like, they took this off a vehicle they killed or something like that.
Right.
And so I read the serial number over the SATCOM to the British jock, the British command center. I'm going, can you tell me what unit this came from, so we can give it back to them, because I'm sure they probably want it back, and we're not letting the militia keep it, obviously. And the reply I got was a little unusual. It said, there is no database of 50 cal serial numbers. There are over 10,000 missing, and there's no point. The only record anybody has of any 50 cal is in each individual armory has their inventory and their serial numbers. And I was like, oh, really?
You mean missing in the war in Iraq, or
No.
missing?
No, missing since the thing was made in the early 1900s when they started manufacturing. Apparently, we've been giving this to allies for 100 years almost, and they've been selling them to other people, and and they're just, and then it doesn't, and then you include how many we left in Vietnam, and then of course, God help us, how many we just left in Afghanistan. So that number's way up, So, anyways, apparently no one knew, and there's no way to find out. So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. The serial number looks really familiar. It's on our armory list. So
you kept them on, Deuce.
I think the unit still has that gun, but so we just took it, but you can only assume that it came from, an American or British vehicle over there, most likely. But we got it back for what it's worth. But anyways, as we continued to get up there, we're waiting for this big battle in Almara, and it never happened. The militia, because I had a kind of a get out of jail free card, which will come up later, with General Petraeus about things I could do that were unusual. One of which was appear on Al Jazeera, and I could do that. I also could talk to the press anytime I wanted, and all that sort of thing, which I had to be very, very careful with. So I was on Al Jazeera, and I got briefed ahead of time as to what was going to happen. I'm standing next to the general, kind of doing the, giving everyone the evil eye and nodding when he would kind of elbow me, wanted me to nod, so as if I understood what he was saying. And basically he was saying that, all the militia in Almara is cowards, again, the son of 16 dogs comment came up. I'm like, I don't get that. Still don't get that. And that we're coming for Makata al-Sadr, and that, and he apparently nods me, and the Marines are going to kill him. And then he'd elbow me and I'd nod. I find this out later, is what I'm saying, and I'm just like, holy crap. Okay. That's not generally what we do, but, that is, I understood that and had been briefed, and actually had gotten enough training on handling the media before I came over, suspecting that this kind of thing could happen. And, luckily they weren't saying anything worse than that, because my own Terp was listening, and then he would come tell me what was said. And it was all within the realm of reason, because it's, psychological warfare saves lives. It really does. So it turns out Makata al-Sadr had failed to pay his militia and had run to Iran. He left like that day at 2 o'clock. He ran out of the country and apparently stayed in Iran for 3.5 years. I found out, I mean, we literally chased him out of the country. And so the militia just kind of evaporated.
Yeah.
That horrible
sugar daddy, no ATM. They're gone.
No, they're gone. And so this is right after we had also done a bunch of other maneuvers that had just been slaughtering them. So, their time was done. And we were the one to deliver them to Allah if they ever wanted to meet them. And, we were helping them along their way. So we figured, okay, we're done, for crying out loud. Now can I hit the chow hall 3 times a day and the gym twice? And, so we go up to TQ, we're now
out to got him, baby.
Yeah, down on American base, we're back up there. And I remember I met with my, kind of immediate superior there, another major, and I'm like, I can't believe we're still alive. We're all deaf, but I can't believe we're still alive. And now maybe we can chill a little bit. And he's up there like, holy crap, guys, good on you, And so we get there and we are there 6 days. 6 days. Right. And I'm thinking we're going to be here the next 4.5 months, Nope. I get same call, same colonel from Al-Assad, same thing. You're going to reattach to 211 Iraqi Brigade, and you're going to the north of Baghdad. This time your target's AQI. And I'm like, what the hell's AQI? Who's that? And like, Al-Qaeda, Iraq. I'm like, you told me Al-Qaeda wasn't in Iraq. It's like, yeah, they're in here, and then this is where they are. So to the north we went. And it was like, my God, have you got nobody else's phone number? You're killing me here, So off we go some more. And we go into the Diyala River Valley, check in at Fob Warhorse. And the games begin with the U.S. Army right out of the gate. They do not know we're coming. They don't know why we're there. And I'm escorted immediately to the colonel, the base CO's office. And his question is, what the hell are U.S. Marines doing in an Army area of operations without the command being informed?
No, but you're with the Iraqis though, right?
Oh yeah. But we're on Fob Warhorse. That's a U.S. Army fob. That's where I'm going for gas, tires, ammo, food, water, repairs, everything, And, my basic mission is I'm living off, the logistics of whoever's near me. And so I literally got in the colonel's office, and things like, I want all your JTACs to take a JTAC proficiency test before you can operate my AO. And I'm just like, we've dropped more in the last few months than you guys have dropped in your entire life. Entire life. Okay. We are more proficient than your entire unit put together. I'm not taking a test you're writing with the intention of stopping us from, operating in your area. I'm not playing this, and so I literally asked if I could use his phone. And I go, there's a call coming in for you. I just know it. And I call, I get out of jail for it card, Chief of Staff Petraeus. It's right. And I'm like, this is the situation. I need support. He's not giving it. I'm getting harassment. I don't have time. I got to roll out of here. I got like half an hour to get off this fob and join the Iraqis as we go into Baqaba, the city right outside the fob. I go, I got things to do. And he just says, put them on. So I put it on and I stand in front of the desk at parade rest, like a good Marine. And it started out with, who the hell is this? To the yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And then he goes, of course, sir, right away, sir. And he hangs up the phone and he's like, what is it that you require? And I said, whatever I ask for, when I ask for it, no resistance. I need whatever you got when I want it, period. And he then calls his XO in, who was actually standing in the doorway at the time. And the XO goes, come on, I got you, and tells me, don't ever go in that office again. And he goes, just come to me. I got this. I got you. I knew you were coming, but I just got that message. You were already here. And I'm like, guys, this is Army versus Army. Okay. I can't control your communications between higher headquarters. Okay. I'm not even in the Army, So the XO was really smart guy, really wanted to play ball. And so we rolled out into Bakaba, and we're not getting a friendly reception at all out there. It's like, you kind of get the vibe out there is, watch yourself, don't dismount. This is Indian country. We are not safe here at all. And so we're very, very, very careful. And then we continued out into one of the AOs and started literally operating the AO and meeting with local, people. Not a friendly reception as well. And pretty soon we realized that the Army AO commander is chasing us down, and he's a lieutenant colonel. And we meet with him, and he's a Hawaiian guy. And you know what? Great leader, great lieutenant colonel, was doing a great job. No one told him. He had no idea we were, there. And I'm just like, what is going on with you guys? Come on, talk more, And then I tell him what we're doing there. And he's like, I don't like it, but how can I help? He can read the tea leaves just as well as anybody else. And so we have a mission, and my latest mission had changed like that hour, and I was to hunt down and just said, terminate AQI leader's command. And I was like, well, that's pretty simple. Not really a Marine Corps mission normally, but sure, I can do that. And so they gave me all the information on this guy that they had, which was precious little. And he would use different names. He'd usually pick some Arab celebrity's name, like a singer's name, and that's the name he'd go by for this 30-day period. And then I don't think anybody really knew who he was. So we literally started the process of hunting this guy down. And we were, getting so much intel at a certain point, we had to kind of stop and organize it, because we had, certain people were very hostile towards us. And then we get other people that would come up, and they had been brutalized by Al Qaeda. I mean, brutalized. And they looked at us as like, we're here to save them. And they want us really, really bad to go get this guy. And so they're feeding us lots of information. And so we continually went back and forth to Fob Warhorse. And it was clear to us when we finally pinned the Army down as to, what do you know about AQI? Okay, I'm not reinventing the wheel here. Stop playing I got a secret, And so we then, the XO goes, oh my God, I thought you already got this brief. And he gave us the brief from hell about Al Qaeda. The Army had known Al Qaeda was operating in there for 5 years. And then Al Qaeda had laid multiple IED belts around this enormous area right in the middle of their AO. And the Army had lost so many people trying to get through it that they stopped trying to get through it. And Al Qaeda had a safe haven.
So they just took over
for years in there. And I'm like, what do you guys do for a living again? Are you serious? And so 4,800 trigger pullers on Fob Warhorse, and Al Qaeda, a stone's throw away, is operating freely.
Yeah.
And I was beyond mad, beyond furious with them over that. And, I know that may or may not have been within their purview. That could have been from higher. I don't know. But I was like, this is BS, man. So I'm going to go in there and get my ass blown off when you guys have been sitting here all day, all year. I mean, are you kidding? So I'm like, you know what? I'm pulling that card again. And so I made a very specific request. I want all of their EOD assets available to me, and I need a road in. You are going to clear this. We are going to get in this area. And for God's sakes, open Route Corona, which is like this big highway that bisected the thing. I go, because I'm going to cut their forces in half. Yeah. And then I'm going to mass mine on one half of theirs at a time. And they're not going to survive this. I'll drive them into their own IED belts, And so we're very busy mapping all this out. And the Army had a lot of good intel on it. And so we used all that. And, then, the guys that could help us were helping us as much as they could. And we eventually got through it by dropping a armored bulldozer scoop was taking about the top 6 inches of soil off, and he made a road. And he would just throttle down on that thing and he had this weird plow looking scoop on it. and it was just throwing stuff right and left. And it was like a road big enough for you to go single file down, brand new.
Right.
And so they blew the scoop off that truck, I think 5 or 6 times. And he was towing a trailer full of all these extra scoops, and he'd get blown, and he'd drop the scoop to the right, and he'd turn around and pick up a new one and just keep going. And luckily that thing had a really good set of armor on it.
I
And
was going to say, how'd the guy not get
well,
concussion?
eventually, he had to swap out with two or three other guys continually,
Mm.
and they're all getting concussed. They were just sacrificing themselves to get us in there. And in the meantime, Army was working on Route Corona, but we just had to get in before this, and mainly to attract the attention of Al Qaeda to keep them off the Army EOD guys. And I'm like going, I can't let those guys get hurt. Okay, they got a job to do. I need them to do it. I'm just going to keep driving in here, and we're going to be the one getting all the attention from them. And we did. And we started getting hit and mortared and fired on, but they kept moving. They're super maneuverable. And so this was like a running gunfight from afar continually. And it went on day and night as we continued to chase. Eventually we'd have to stop, and let everybody recover a little bit and then go again. And of course, Al Qaeda, each time we did that, they'd counterattack. And so we had to always be in a safe area where we had a good perimeter, and we had a lot of, physical obstacles around us. And, and it was, they were trying to regain the initiative, but clearly they were being invaded and knew it. And so we had, 2 predators up, and the Army with these things called Mikliks, which are like a rocket propelled explosive cable with a whole bunch of like beads on it that were all little bombs, kind of like a modern Bangalore torpedo. They'd fire these things and blow, and it should blow, set off all the IEDs on the road. The little side fact about that is it also destroys the road. Okay, we weren't aware of that, but once we, and they said, hey, the Mikliks got through the first band of IEDs, and we're moving to the second one, and we'd had, I think, 8 Iraqis that were helping with the Iraqi EOD tasks. 8 were killed, and I think 19 were wounded in medevac by this point, and a couple of the Army guys got killed. So this was an ugly event, and we were just suffering. It was like just a grind, and we were already maneuvering.
Do you have Apache support?
Yep.
Or
Yep. But these things are autonomous. Once they're laid, there's no people there.
Right.
And so we had what we needed. Whenever we needed it, but you got to have a viable target for them to hit. And so we were, using whatever we had with the predators, but it was hard to pin them down. These guys were pretty savvy. And then at a certain point in the northern part of this route area above Route Corona, we had them running. Then at that point, we had denied everything to them, including the ability to stop for food and water. And we just kept them like we're driving them or herding them. And so once they got near the southern end of this thing, we could now freely navigate Route Corona. It was open. We had the bulldozers scrape all the rubble to kind of give us a gravel road where the Mikliks had blasted it to pieces. And so we could operate at will in there. However, they had some crazy ambushes set up. And as we were getting closer and closer to them, each village we'd come to, they had, even though they're Sunni and Al Qaeda Sunni, there's no brotherhood here. All right. Each village Al Qaeda had come to, they would line up all the women and children and then line up the elders and say, where are your fighting age men? And they would want to enslave them to build basically bunkers and obstacles and whatever else, and at gunpoint, and the men would hide all the men. So these guys weren't after the women and children, they're after the men, as workers. And
Sure.
Of course they knew that once Al Qaeda took a man, you'd never see him again. He'd never come back. Right. And so the elders were like, no, and they would start executing the families right in front of the patriarchs. And they would keep going until the patriarchs couldn't take it anymore, and then they would surrender and comply and give up their men if the killing would stop. And then, of course, Al Qaeda would set mines all over their city, their little village. And so they'd have to move. So now they're all displaced. Now the whole group is refugees because they didn't cooperate with Al-Qaeda. So Al-Qaeda has now made them all homeless in the desert in the summer, right? Which is almost a death sentence, to the rest of them. And there's one picture I tried to send you earlier. I don't know if you got it, but it was, one of the villages we came to, they're like ghost towns. And all we had was one like child, like a toddler's shoe was all that was left in the middle of the road with a completely abandoned village behind it and not a human sign anywhere. And it was like just surreal, and we're like, where are these people? There's still pots of water sitting on benches. I mean, they weren't here that long ago, Yeah. And as we kept getting closer and closer to catching this guy, we kept getting closer and closer to the killings. And, because each town we'd come to, the dead had been buried. The villagers had buried the dead before they left. And then we got to one where they weren't. And we're like, they've left in a hurry here. They know we're almost on them. And so that's when we kind of bunkered down, knowing we've got them cornered against our army friends on three sides. And they're not going, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. And so then we kind of bunkered down in this village that actually was a walled village. So it was very convenient. And the walls weren't that tall. So we could park an MRAP next to it, and the turret gun had full swing right over the wall of the village. And the walls were about 3 feet thick. All adobe. They had no lumber up there or anything like that. And they're too poor for regular cement. So we're like, that wall's ballistically tolerant to a point, And then, we were getting kind of the people were approaching us, including Army SOCOM guys that were operating in that area. Yeah, shocker. And they would come over to us and they would want us to go help them. They don't have the firepower to do what they needed to do down at this prison they were taking over, and that was reinforced. And I'm like, we'll get to you. Right now, no. We have bigger fish to fry. That's your mission. That's not my mission, So, we cooperate with them, but a couple times we had to say no, which I always felt bad about. So what I do is I trade a Predator for a C-130, the AC-130. They kept sending me those things. In the heavy built areas, they're not very useful because they can't hit through the stuff.
Pinpoint.
Yeah, I need a 500 pounder, So I would trade an AC-130 for a Predator, so I get another Predator up. So we do a lot of stuff like that. But anyways, and then we'd have sandstorms coming. And of course, when the Habu comes, like the one we had came, it was from horizon to horizon from our perspective, because we're at ground level. And it's 2.5 miles tall. It's 14,000 feet tall is the estimate. And it's like this wall of dust coming at you. It looks like the end of the world, Yeah. And then once you're in it, it's like you're on Mars. Everything turns orange, and you got to have your Arab wrap around your face so you can breathe without inhaling all that crap. And it lasts for like 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And Al-Qaeda knows you can't see more than 200 feet and you can't get air support and you can't coordinate very well to defend a known position. So they knew where we were, but we didn't know where they were. And I was like, with that sandstorm, they have the initiative again, and so you got to be aware when things are flip-flopping like that. And so, yeah, that's when they hit us. And a firefight in the sandstorm is not what anyone wants. You can't see. And so at a certain point, if you're not sure and you're getting hit, you just start sweeping the guns back and forth at about kneecap level, and if you still get hit, then you go lower, and you're just kind of pretending you're watering your garden in front of you because you can't see anything, and then of course you get a break and then you see what's going on and then you can adjust and then go again. And we had some amazing people with us, on the transition team. We had a sergeant who could hit a bullseye at 200 feet with a grenade launcher. I can't do that, but he could. And he nailed a Russian vehicle that was hitting us with a super heavy gun and took that gun out, flamed that thing. And all he had was a little break in the visibility. We could finally see where this heavy gun was coming from. and just one shot, boom, all the hatches and doors blow off, big fireball, and it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess I owe you a beer. You know, it was
Well, did it
pretty
work?
good.
Did you divide their forces and then drive
We
them
did, we did,
into
and
the IED belt?
yeah, we continued. Well, it actually didn't even go that long. We continued against them, and then we had a sighting. Our lead Iraqi elements that were running around in squad-size elements in vehicles like Mad Max, literally Mad Max, out in front of us. They spotted the leader, the guy I was hunting, because we'd put his picture out. They'd give me a picture of him, so we'd spread that everywhere, and they got a sight of him, and they were radioing back and all that kind of stuff. And the guy, the sandstorm had abated, so now I could see again. And this idiot was in the only four-door bongo truck in the nation of Iraq. There's no way I'm going to lose sight of this guy.
Right.
I've never seen a four-door bongo truck before. And so we had a couple F-16s show up, and we had just done the PowerPoint brief on our last lap through Fob Warhorse about how to use a GBU-54 bomb. That was the new warhead. Now it's not new, but back then it was new. And this thing could hit a maneuvering target.
Ooh,
and
nice.
It constantly updates itself. I can't get into it beyond that, obviously, but it's a genius thing. And PFM machine is inside that, and
PFM, what was PFM?
Pure effing magic.
Oh, okay. Little black
Cannot
box.
be explained by ordinary man, So anyways, all we know is it works. Right. And so, well, I'm hoping it works, because the F-16 showed up with nothing but those.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I hope it works, guys, because now what, So anyways, we quickly went through our new unfamiliar 9-line format because of this new bomb. And it wasn't that far from us, and we could actually see that thing come off the wing. And it came down and then did this bat turn to the south. And I was like, holy crap, look at that thing fly. And it's coming down. It's like a 45-degree dive, but it's moving, but man, can it maneuver. And so we're watching this, and now we're standing on the roofs of the trucks with binos going, holy crap, look at that thing, And anyways.
Can you see it through the Pred feed, or you just watch?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I'm watching on, like my widescreen, in there, which is about that big, But, I've got, the boss's TV. The other guys are, watching it in real time as well. And the Iraqis are all filming it, and whatever. And I remember hollering at the pilot, basic weaponarian kid, put the crosshairs on the front bumper. It always is going to lag. And he's going, oh, got it center mass. Yeah, so the bomb hit slightly behind it. I'm like, oh, you guys are killing me, But it wasn't even 10 feet, and it's a 500-pound bomb. It blew that truck up in the air, flipping it, 100 times. It lands and tumbles across the desert. And I'm like, yeah, they're probably gone. Out of the wreckage, this dude starts getting up, and I'm like, hit it again. And I go, this guy, these are all mass murderers, and the guy in the back was the one that laying the hasty IEDs, that made our Humvee not able to chase him, And I'm like, I've already seen the hostile act. That guy's a killer. Get him. And so they hit it again, and yeah, it hit it. And so there wasn't a whole lot left of the truck.
Yeah. Just
saying. But once it landed back to Earth, it was kind of, you could see where the chassis was and everything. But I had I had the leader, and it turns out his 3 lieutenants were dead with him. And so I immediately had to secure the site, because, Al-Qaeda tries to recover the body right away and claim it didn't happen or whatever. So I had the Air Force dropped it. Me, the Marine, controlled it. I had a Navy no-glow team on the south end as the catcher's mitt, and I had the Army cordoning on in a, circumnavigating our area so that nothing could get in or out. Everyone but the Coast Guard was involved in this thing, so it was,
they were on the river.
But it just showed that joint is real, man. It works, and it can be super seamless. It was like we were all one unit. It was beautiful. It was a beautiful thing.
So did you guys end up destroying AQI in that whole area?
We were down to hunting them down in the field in onesies and twosies, and the Iraqi soldiers were insisting that they all get shot in the head, which was kind of not really a decision because the Al-Qaeda guys don't give up.
Yeah.
They come at you even when you've killed them. I'm not quite dead yet. And we found out we've kept recovering these syringes these guys were carrying. And we sent them to the British going, what is in these things? You know, one was full of Novocaine, the other one was full of adrenaline. And they are literally, when they're getting hit and they're surrounded and they're about to get killed, they just, you know, stick both these things, I guess, in their heart and get up and come at you. And it's like,
Zombies.
You know,
wow.
One of the guys, I swear we blew his chest out and he didn't die for another 20 or 30 seconds, you know, and I'm like, what the heck? You know,
they're zombies, man. You got to get headshots.
Well, yeah. So when we figured this out, I sat down all the leadership, both us and the Iraqis, and I go, I know you guys play video games, you bunch of idiots. So this is like zombie apocalypse game. You have to shoot them in the head. They are zombies. I didn't realize, of course, until later that the Iraqis actually believe in zombies. So the first guy that they took down had like 17 headshots. And I'm like, okay, now you're just wasting ammo, you know, come on, you know. But yeah, they were really terrified of these guys, you know. And so that was it for the whole rest of the time we were there. Everyone headshot, everything,
That's
you know.
funny.
And I was like, holy crap, you know, be careful what you say, you know. But you know, we had a little bit of unfinished business, and I had the body of this AQI leader laying in a ditch here, and we informed through the AWAC, we informed CENTCOM, you know, he's dead. We have him.
You have to do DNA on him or anything weird like that?
Well, that's when it got weird. All right. Yeah, if it could get weirder. They said some contractors are going to come pick it up, secure the site. And I'm like, contractors are coming out here? Do you know where we are? Right. And I tell them, hey, remind them of the road they got, you know, there's only one way in, you know, and they go, oh no, they've been following you. They're aware. They're almost to you. And I'm just like, okay, there's a lot of moving parts I am not aware of here.
Yeah.
So while we're waiting for them, I get another email, you know, on my Blue Force tracker, really irritating that works that way. And it's this general I never heard of. And he's saying, good job with the GBU 54. It will be briefed at the White House within the hour. That was the first combat use of this warhead. And I guess, you know, billions in contracts are just waiting to get the trigger pulled here until we see if this thing actually works under duress. It worked beautifully, you know, and I'm like, what? You know, and how am I briefing anybody from what? You know, and then it says, please put a storyboard together and forward to this. And it's like a live video feed channel. And I'm like, okay, stop, you know. And so my reply was, I'm 4 hours from a paved road. I'm right now guarding the AQI leader's body till we hand it over to the contractors. And we're still engaged with Al-Qaeda. I can hear the machine guns to my east going off. We're still fighting. I need to get over there. You know, I'm still in contact. And what the hell is a storyboard? Because I'd never heard that term before. You know, now everybody knows what that is. But I'm looking at my gun. I go, what's a storyboard? He goes, I don't know, a cartoon that Disney makes? I don't know. You know, I mean, none of us know what he's talking about, you know. So we then, you know, get the reply back, oops, sorry, we'll take care of it from here. And then he asked me just a series of questions, and I give him little bullet answers, and I'm like, get off the thing, you know, and send it off. And it turned out that's exactly what was going on. They were, you know, the manufacturers were waiting for this, you know.
Really?
So it worked. It worked. Now, when I got back from Iraq, I'll tell you what, the amount of classified briefings I had to do revolving around the GBU 54, I'll tell you what, if I could have picked a different warhead, I would have. What a pain that is when you're the first one that made it work. You know, you're like, oh my God.
And it worked really well, except the guy didn't lead the target.
Basic weaponeering, man. No matter how modern it is, you got to put the pipper where you got to put the pipper, you know.
So the guys all know you're a Harrier pilot. You've done air to mud.
Yep.
So you've got that experience, Qual, under your belt.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
So to me, I was like, okay, well, it's going to be a big enough bang. It's in the end of the world, and it was. But the contractors come in like 5 gloss black armored Suburbans with like holes in the top, and a guy sticking his head out, and I'm like, you guys stick out like the cue ball. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And they showed up, and they have like dry ice lined coffins, and they pick the bodies up and they refrigerate them, so that they don't want them to spoil. And they put them in there, and they then gave me a receipt. Yeah,
For the body.
a receipt for the bodies. And I'm like, and who do I take this to? I mean, are you kidding me?
You should have kept that. You should have kept that. Do you still have it?
I gave it to the Mitt. He was the senior guy there at the time. The transition team guy, another good guy. And I'm just like, okay, whatever. And so off they go. And I'm like, okay, but I had to ask one question. I'm like, wait, how do you know where this guy's DNA is? What good is his DNA to you? How would you even know what to match it with? And they're like, the word is we have his brother. And I'll just leave it at that. And I'm like, oh, so you can match it, So since he was like a big announcement that this guy had gone down, they have to verify it and make sure double sure I got the right guy. Number one, before they let me off the scene, which was a bit of a pain. And number two, before they announce it to the world that this guy's dead.
Nice.
And so, shortly thereafter, they made the announcement that it was the right guy. And that the guys we got with him, they also were looking for, and we were about to get missions on hunting them down. So luckily they're all in one place. So we had gotten in multiple fights, and we'd had, a couple of bunkers we ran into where I dropped 6 bombs on this little bunker, the most reinforced structure I've ever run into. I mean, 6 500-pound bombs, and we did not destroy it. All we did is collapse most of it.
Yeah, but surely the concussion would kill the people inside.
Oh no, we weren't worried about. There was nobody in it, but we were worried about Al Qaeda reoccupying it, because where it was, it could control a large area, including 2 roads, and we're like, they cannot have a bunker here.
Gotcha.
But we had dealt with the Marsh Arabs, which are like true Stone Age smugglers. We had dealt with them. We dealt with Iranian crossing points where we had hit. Actually, people we found out later were Iranians, and we'd had a feint down in Al Faw to flush the militia out right into a kill zone that the Iraqi army had prepared for them by convincing them they're about to get bombarded with naval gunfire. I mean, we'd had all these little plots and subplots going on. It was a seriously complex operation, and it all revolved around us, and it was a lot to manage. It was a lot.
When are you going to put a book together?
I got the book together. It's
really?
At the editor. It's still at the editor, and she's going to do a great job and give it back to me, and probably go back and forth a couple of times. Blood and Sand. That's the name of it. Working title.
That's cool.
Probably going to change. But yeah, it's not too crazy long like this episode is going. but it's
no, it's an hour and 43 minutes. But I'll tell you what,
I'm wrapping it up, man. I am.
When you get the book done, we're going to come in for part 3, and then you can pimp the book.
Perfect. But the biggest thing with all of these deals, with all of these deployments and all that is getting out of there. I mean, you eventually have got to get extracted, and once we had, hey, Bronco, good to hear from you, brother. But when it's time to get extracted, you got to know when you're going to stop fighting, back up, pass the flag to the guys behind you, and move on.
Yeah.
And we'd had a lot of crazy, funny things happen, and I just can't get into that. That's hours of beer talk. But we did have to back off, and we ripped, with the unit that's replacing us, saying Al Qaeda's almost gone. The Iraqis are doing the cleanup right now. They're all over the place, just in terrible gunfights with these drugged out maniacs. And the Iraqis were very brave. Very brave.
It's amazing. It's amazing how we did the whole C-Sticka with Iraq, and it worked. And yet we failed in Afghanistan, and all the money and time we put into their training. It is amazing to me that Iraq hasn't fallen yet. They're still holding on.
Well, the area south of Baghdad where we did the clear, hold, stabilize. I talked about previously bringing in police from other areas, making them watch each other with a bonus system to catch each other. And while the mayor was under the gun as being the tribal leader, that if he didn't play ball, we'd come back and kill him and give it to his arch rival, and their tribe would rule the city forever. I mean, all these checks and balances in there all revolved around the dollar and the barrel of a gun, basically, which everyone in the world understands those two things.
Yeah.
And even with the rising of ISIS after we left in the north, ironically, the area south where we did the clear, hold, stabilize stayed stable. If you look at it, they are still stable. That's like the only stable area over there most of the time, because I think honestly it's because of the system we put in place there, and the fact that the government's continuing to honor it over there.
Right.
And driving a long column of armored vehicles through it once in a while, that the Iraqi army does continually as a show of force that we're here, we will roll on you anytime, and so it works. Fear brings stability sometimes, and it seems to be working in the south. And the other places, there was governmental failures, military failures, and inexcusable stuff with the rise of ISIS that should not have happened.
Right.
But you can look at our side as well as their side for lack of situational awareness and lack of timely tactical movement with lead, and with trigger down. They didn't do what we had learned to do. Everyone, and eventually the West will learn you cannot fight a politically correct war. War is not politically correct. It's a horrible thing, the worst thing humans do to each other, and you should only do it when you absolutely have to. And when you do, go in there with as much firepower as possible and get it over with, and then get out.
Yeah.
And
well, here's a problem.
You end up with less casualties.
Yeah, but here's the problem. We're a nation building force now. So we go in, break something,
Huge
we
mistake.
feel obligated to go fix it and make
Huge
them
mistake.
westernized. Yeah, it is huge.
Yeah, we can't do this. And as we're seeing with what's happened in Afghanistan, it will fail. Just stop it. When you don't have the buy-in of the populations, that's what we had. I don't think they had that in Afghanistan. I think Afghanistan is so tribal. There's no Afghan national identity. It's tribal identities. And the Iraqi side, the army pulled from everybody. And I think that was the big homogenous force, was the fact that the army, everybody in every town in every ethnic of that country had people in the army. And the army is so big over there. And so anyone shooting at the army, a certain number of the people are going to be angry with them because you're shooting at my relatives.
Sure.
And so you start to get that identity back. And, we had, the Iraqis that we dealt with were very proud to put the Iraqi flag up. They weren't putting tribal banners up. They weren't putting Taliban banners up, see, that's got nothing to do with a nation. That's a political group, and we weren't seeing any of that. And if anyone had spotted that a tribal leader had put up a tribal flag, first thing that happened is a whole bunch of Iraqi soldiers went over there and burned them out.
Good.
Tore the flag down and burned it right in front of everybody and killed the leader, and then would come back over there with a threat of "Don't make me do this again," and it was like there was no flexibility, there was no grace.
Carry a big stick, man. Well, Jeet says good evening, and
hey, how you doing?
Harem Ford air controller, like the character played by Danny Glover in Bat 21. Well, he was a fast. He wasn't a fast fact.
He was a fat gay.
He was a fat gay.
Yeah.
Which
today the JTAG, I was with the Anglico group, which is small teams with a central supporting arms liaison team controlling smaller firepower control teams, SALTs and FICs, we call them. And they are either operate independently or they'll be embedded with foreign forces, and it's a team effort. And yeah, there is a JTAC in each one of the teams, and in the SALT usually has a couple of them. And yeah, they can, they can operate as autonomously as they need to bring anything in from the air, and artillery and rockets as well if needed.
Right. Well, Harry, you're always on the show. Do me a favor, send me a message. I got to find out who the hell you are. I don't even know who you are, but you have some great questions sometimes. And Bat
Yeah.
21, Colonel Hamilton was a when I was a young man, we were pen pals. After that book came out in high school, I read it and it said, the very last line said, he and his wife Gwen lived not too far from a golf course in Tucson. So I called information back when you could do that, and his phone number was listed in the book.
There you
So I
go.
called him up and talked to him for like 2 hours, and then we became pen pals. And then when I got into 130s, we flew out to Tucson to get some parts off old C-130s out there,
Yeah.
and we had dinner with him. So very neat.
Oh, nice.
Neat deal. Here, you
What a
seem to
good
know about
experience.
it, but yeah, get up with me and I'll send you some cool stuff that he gave me. And Daisy Cutter, no, we were talking about a 500-pound bomb going into Syntex or whatever the heck those guys had.
Yeah,
And
these are, yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking the old Marine Corps adage could be used today within and on the U.S. borders. We gotta be
Easy with
careful
that, man. There's
No,
this
no, we
posse
don't like that.
comitatus thing out there. Yeah, we don't
No,
do that.
we don't do that. Kid caps, Sluggo rocks. Hell yeah,
Hey,
he
thank you
does.
for that. Thank you.
Josh sounds like conventional Marines.
That sounds like an Army guy. I think I know Josh. Yeah. I think he's in
Josh.
Colorado Springs right now.
And Bronco.
Hey, Bronco, good to hear from you.
Happy birthday, Mitch. Yeah,
There you go.
It's my birthday today, so I had a great birthday.
Well, here you go. 56 years old. There you
go. Yeah, 56, baby. Here we go. 9 years left. I can't wait to retire.
Yeah, but as everybody will tell you, the coming home part, extracting yourself, that's the hard part. Oh, thanks, Nikki. And the Sean Chaney, that is probably the most resilient man I've ever met in my life.
Once again, another great episode. Always entertaining to hear you speak, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. Outstanding.
He's a great guy. But coming out of there, once we did the rip, the Anglico team that was coming in to relieve us, I mean, they were just like, "Oh, what did you do?" And we're like, "Look, all you got left is to supervise the mopping up and give them support if they need it in the north, until something else happens." And there's this guy who's going to call you from CENTCOM, and you're screwed, and he was just like, "Oh shit," And
how was their tour? Did you ever stay up with them?
They got into it a little bit as well. Yeah, they got into it, but they cleaned up there, and they continue to work with the Army up there, and it worked. It worked. Everybody works together when you make them.
Yeah.
And but getting out of there, we're driving back to Al Assad, and my guys are tired, and it's like, look, we've been going almost 24 hours, but the freaking plane's going to leave without us. Okay, I'm looking at my watch. I'm going, even I can tell time. Okay, we got to get out of here. So we are blazing like maniacs through northern Iraq, trying to get back down to Al Assad to get out of this country.
Why did they grab helicopters, pick you guys up? You couldn't.
We got to bring the trucks back and everything, because our trucks are just blasted. They're held together with baling wire and duct tape at this point. And luckily we had good mechanics with us, or we wouldn't have even been able to do that. And they'd all been hit. And so we're bringing them back. And, we got everybody, we got the BFT has these little friendlies on it, so we can look at your extended column as you're rolling back, as we're kind of rolling back and picking up all the other Marine units as well that are spread out that haven't somehow figured out how to get home yet. And we're trying to get out of there. And I'm leading them out of there. And I'm like, that's fine. I put a really, really great captain in the lead to navigate our way out there. He's one of the active duty 1st Anglico guys. Love those guys. They're amazing humans. And we're blazing through, and suddenly tail end Charlie stops. And we're like yelling at him. We don't get an answer on the radio. And I'm like, turn him around right now, And so everybody turns around, and the truck right in front of him says, I didn't see anything, but he's gone. And so we all go back, and here's this MRAP smoking, laying on its side with the whole front of it torn off and pieces of armor and gear all over the road, and a couple of Marines laying in the gear, just laying on the road, just kind of writhing around. And I'm like, holy crap, what happened? Turns out the driver was, one of the things when you go into the overpass is the Iraqi bad guys will literally drop concrete blocks that'll crash through your windshield as you come under the underpass. So each time you go to an underpass, you make a big jog to make sure if they are dropping, they're going to miss you. And it becomes, there weren't necessarily guys up at every overpass, but it becomes habit. And that's just simply a battle drill. This is the way you travel. Every time you go an underpass, you all grossly deviate from your path coming out the other side so you don't get beheaded, And he bobbed when he should have weaved, I guess, and somehow he collided with a set of concrete steps coming down like the bank on the side of the freeway. And it literally tore the front of the MRAP off, and we don't know what flips and rolls this thing had done, but the turret gunner was in bad shape. And I estimated, while I'm looking at him, I go, I know what that sounds like. And I go, Corman, what does it sound like to you? And he goes, he's got a lung that's collapsing or has collapsed, and he's hurt. He's in trouble. And so we grab a small group, 3 vehicles. I'm one of them. And we grab them, and we're ground medevacing them to the closest Army fob. And they had these little outpost fobs that were not very big. And we're dragging them there to get them medevaced, And it was not easy to find this damn place. We finally found it, and then we can't find where the LZ is in it because they've intentionally made it a maze, And I'm like, okay, I really don't have time for this. And this kid's breathing is not sounding good at all. And we finally get the helicopter's pretty quick. It's inbound, and we just see where it lands, and we just go there. It just picked a spot and landed, not really in the LZ. And we go over there to load him up, and here comes the Army that runs the fob. They don't know what the hell we're doing there. Their gate guard, we told them to get out of the way, basically. And so they have an Army medic is trying to stop the medevac until he evaluates the guy. And that's when, a very rare instance was one of us pulling rank. You just don't do that in combat. Everybody knows who everybody is. And, you just fall in. This kid just didn't get it. And so I literally had to get in his face and threaten him with a court martial. He doesn't get out of my way and get away from my Marine. He has no authority to touch anybody that's not in the Army. Stand down and, for God's sakes, find your officer. I need to talk to him. And so then we medevaced him, got him out of there real quick. And I had a short and unpleasant conversation with a young Army officer who did not understand what was wrong with this medic, and I'm just like, I get it. You get it. He doesn't get it. All right. And I go, do not make me write this up. Control your people, for crying out loud. You're the commander. What the hell? And so I was like, the knife hand came out, and I'm just like, I'll give you a little bit of old core here, for God's sakes, And so anyways, then we got off that thing. And then we, as we're dragging this piece of crap that we got back on its wheels, with all these pieces missing, we're dragging it back. The wheels, the tires go flat in the back, and they're on the run flats. I'm like, they're on run flats. That's fine. Then the tires start igniting and they start burning. Now we got these, burning tires on the back. And I'm just like, who signed off on this run flat system? This is this is what we got. I'm like, the truck's on fire. Great. And so here comes another Army fob on my map, my electronic map. And I'm like, okay, pull in. I need new tires. And for God's sakes, find a fire extinguisher, which of course we had our own, So when we came to a stop, we had to, put the fire out. And the Army guys at the gate of the fob are like, what the hell, And so we come on, and then I quickly meet with their major there. Great guy. That dude ran his fob perfectly. Like I said, the Army, when they're good, And I'm like, I need 2 new tires. And he goes, well, good luck. We have the tires, but they're buildups on rims made for the other brand of MRAP, not your brand. The Army has a different brand. And I'm like, I know the mil spec for lug patterns has got to be the same. The requirement is they all use the same tires as our 7-ton trucks. They're all use the same tires. That's the whole idea. And he's like, well, let's try it. So we, had this thing jacked up. We wheel over this 450-pound tire buildup, take ours off, put this one on. It won't go on. It's a different lug pattern. Like trying to put a Chevy rim on a Dodge,
Oh my God.
They're both 5-bolt lug patterns, but you can't do it. It's a different size. And so we literally have to take this thing apart. And those things are assembled on a big hydraulic arbor.
And they're split rim.
And we have, and they're 3-piece. And there's like, we don't have a hydraulic arbor. These buildups happen up at, Balad or Al Assad, and they get shipped to us already built up. And so all I can say is 10 Marines, 2 soldiers, every crowbar we could find on that fob, and 3 cans of WD-40. And we had disassembled 2 Army tires and the run flats, and disassembled 2 Marine ones, and then reassembled the Marine ones with the new tires on them. And we had 2 Marines walked away with broken fingers. I mean, like bad broken fingers, like, holy crap, hope you don't lose that finger, And and then we used the bolts itself to draw the 2 halves together. We didn't have a press. And I'm like, again, that was one of the complaints I made to the congressman that visited me. And when I got home, going, you got to control mil spec here, guys. You're on the House Armed Services Committee. Get it together, Yeah. Anyways, but so we then were underway again. So by the time we finally got back to Al Assad, it's like 3 a.m, by this time. And, we look like terrible zombies. And, our vehicles are limping and squeaking and smoking. And, we finally make it there. And General Kelly came out, along with our higher headquarters. And he was shaking all our hands. He's a great, great guy. And he's just like, Jesus Christ, man, you guys just wrecked shop. And we're like, well, that's what we do. That's what we do. So we got out of there pretty quick. And like that day, we got on the C-130 and got out of there. Jeez. So we didn't miss our pickup. And then we're supposed to be in Kuwait for like 2.5, 3 weeks.
Sure.
To cool off.
Right.
Down. 2 days later, we get the word we're leaving the next day.
Nice.
And I'm like,
well,
everybody wants to go.
Waiting.
Yeah, so everybody wants to go home, but my guys are still a little wrung out. Okay, they are not ready for prime time yet. We need to calm down. They're not where they need to be.
Yeah.
I need more time here. Sorry. And the answer was, no, you're leaving. And so, we then get this silly form about, if you've seen anything bad, check here, with the caveat and the brief from the guy handing it to you. If you check yes to any of these things, you're not going home with your unit. And I'm like, really?
No.
I walked right over to my colonel, and I said, we're all saying no. We're all saying no to everything on that sheet about things you may have been exposed to that may have traumatized you. Like, we've been traumatized for 7 months, minus 6 days. And I guarantee every one of my guys is going to go see the wizard when we get home. Mm-hmm. Every one of them. We're not doing it in Kuwait. We're getting out of here, And so we did. And, the homecoming was, obviously emotional, awesome. But I realized, me being the oldest and I would hope the most resilient of these guys, just because I have all these decades of life to compare and contrast it to, where an 18 or 19-year-old doesn't have that. I'm 44, for crying out loud. And I was a little high-strung, wrapped up, whatever. I mean, everything's fine. Everybody, says goodbye, hello, all that kind of good stuff. And, real emotional. I won't get into, the homecoming's always awesome. And, the one Marine we had in our unit who nobody was there when he left, and nobody met him there when we got back, because he has no family. That one Marine, luckily we had some wonderful ladies show up from one of our Marine foundations, and we made sure he went home with them.
Oh, nice.
And they kind of gave him a reception, because you always know, every commander knows who those guys are. The
Yeah.
guys that never get any mail, they never go home for the holidays because they got nowhere to go. And so we make sure they get, especially coming back from a deployment like that, we make sure they get hooked up with some kind of a family environment that they can relax in, you know, and all
Sure.
that. So we got, once that was all taken care of, I'm the last guy to leave, which is part of my job as well. And I get in this, you know, the minivan, unfortunately. And but get in the minivan, we're driving out of there. And I told my guys, no one drives for 2 weeks, because we literally were driving worse than any Mad Max movie. You know, we were slamming into cars, we were jumping MRAPs, we were crashing through, you know, walls. We had to do whatever we needed to do over there. The
Right.
last thing in the world I needed was for them to drive on the interstate like that, you know. So I'm like, just calm down. We're here way too soon. Everybody just calm down. Don't go anywhere. Don't do anything for 2 weeks. And for God's sakes, don't drive. So I'm in the passenger seat, and I almost jumped out the door before we even got out of the parking lot, because my wife had the audacity to drive over a manhole cover, you know, which of course is normal life, you know, but I was just like, I mean, my blood pressure, you know, went through the top of my head, and I'm like just gripping the color out of the armrest. I'm going, what are you doing? What are you doing? You know, she's like, oh no, you know,
Dude,
she goes,
been there.
yeah. She's like, Tim, just calm down. Yeah, I'm like, oh my God. Oh, I just need to breathe. You know, the window's coming down. I'm like, oh my God. Okay. I'm good. I'm good. Let's just go home. Just get me home.
The light switch hadn't gone off yet.
No.
And I got back from
And I'm the
Afghanistan.
old
Wife's
guy,
doing the same
you know.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife, she's driving on 820, normal traffic, back up at this one point near our house. And I start screaming at her, get off, get off, get off, hit that way, go. And she's freaking out. She doesn't know what's going on. She gets off on the side road, and she's all panicked. And it wasn't until we got off and clear of the traffic, I start, and she goes, what's the matter? And I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I did not realize I did that. The switch hadn't turned off yet.
Yeah.
So.
Well, when she just merged, you know, right out of Camp Pendleton, you know, you merge right into traffic on Interstate 5.
Yeah.
Same thing again. I'm like, oh, what? Why are you so close? You know, and yeah, it's all just hysteria that hadn't gone away yet. You realize you're living at a level of stress that is like up at the ceiling, and life in the West is down by the floor, you know.
Yep.
And you know, the world isn't the problem. I'm the problem. I need to calm down.
Yeah.
And so I did, you know, but it took me a while, and I don't think I was right, honestly, completely for quite a while. Yes, Bronco. I've never been right, but you know, you know, it's just you know, you gotta shift gears, man. And so of course, when that all happened to me, I'm like, well, no mystery, it's going to happen to the 19-year-olds, you know. And so, you know, we're kind of reaching out every day, then once a week, and then twice a month, you know, calling them, how you doing, what's going on, what are you doing, you going back to work yet, you know, constantly calling them. And you know, we still get together. You know, COVID kind of screwed that up, but we got together in November. But you know, the crew and we get together, and
That's awesome.
We're always checking each other, and we'll text back and forth. Anyone seen, you know, this guy or that guy recently, and have the gunny track them down for me, you know. And you know, you have to. Even though we're all out now, they're still my Marines, you know.
Yeah. Have you lost anybody yet? Knock on wood. No.
We have not. We have not from my immediate unit. Oddly enough, we have from, you know, other Anglico guys from other debts. Yeah, we unfortunately have the, you know, some of the guys I was the most worried about have actually become the ones that are reaching out the most to the other guys as they get help. They realize that, you know, the help actually works, and so they want to give it to everybody else. Wow. So it's working, you know, but it's a tough road to hoe, man. And you know, I you know, and occasionally, you know, my wife has told me multiple times, you know, because I'd ask her, you know, I didn't have a nightmare last night, did I, or anything like that, you know, and she'll, you know, they stopped after a while. And, you know, I think it probably was a full year before I was completely, I think, immune from blood pressure spikes, you know, because I was having them.
Wake up at 3:05 every morning.
Well, a little of that. And also if I'm, you know, because I'm an airline guy, we travel all over the place, you know. So if I'm grabbing a sandwich at, you know, a sandwich shop, and a woman in Muslim garb would walk up next to me to order a sandwich, I just had to take a moment, you know, and just not let it get under my skin, because she's actually very nice. And we actually talked a little while, and she's, you know, Jordanian, and she's like a dentist or something, you know, super nice lady. And I'm just like, I had to kind of check myself, because suddenly somewhere there was, you know, someone in that garb right next to me, you know, and I didn't know they were coming. And obviously not a threat, but, you know, and as time's gone by, you know, I've reminded myself continually, the moderate Muslim is our ally. The moderate Muslims were the ones taking bullets for us. You know, they saved us. They died saving us, and they're very loyal, and, you know, they will be our allies for generations to come, and we need to make sure we don't squander that. These guys can get it done. They really can. I watched it in living color of them just having unlimited bravery, you know, in the face of overwhelming odds, and just taking the hit if that's what was going to happen that day.
Yeah.
And they didn't back down. We didn't, you know, we didn't have the death blossoms. We didn't have craziness. Once in a while we had a guy that kind of came unglued, and we, you know, got him glued back together or kicked him out of the unit. You know, it just happened quick. But, you know, this whole thing is, you got to keep your eyes open and kind of look at the whole picture here. You know, who were we really, you know, fighting with and for over there? And I think you will find the moderate Muslim in the center of all of that. And that is the only hope for that area of the world, that those guys prevail. You know, one of the generals, you know, specifically, when I asked him what religion he was, I won't tell you his name because he's still over there and very, very high up in the chain of command still. But when I asked him what religion he was, just out of curiosity, as we're having a cup of tea, he says, you know, he's the one who said, I am a Sunni, I am a Shia, I am a Kurd, I am a soldier.
Good deal.
He goes, it doesn't matter. The future of Iraq rests on the shoulders of the moderates. You know, and, you know, he'd been, you know, obviously a lifetime Iraqi, except he'd also lived in London for about 20 years. So, you know, these guys are not stupid guys. You know, these are smart, capable people. So, you know, I was pleasantly surprised and occasionally horrified by what I saw over there. You know, and all I could say is that, you know, if you have any questions, I'll sure take them. But you know, the book will be coming out. The book will be coming out, and if you buy a hardcover, I'll sign it for you.
Well, listen, it's been 2 hours and 12 minutes. I can't thank you enough, Sluggo, for coming on Tall Tales with Taco. And we will definitely meet again down the road, discuss the book, and maybe have a part 3 about something. Maybe we'll talk PTS. That'll be a subject that
sure. I
could help some guys
actually
out.
had a whole bunch of experience on that as well later on in life.
Yeah. Well, can't thank you
subject.
enough. Everybody love the show. Do me a favor, share it with your friends, hit subscribe, like the bell, Taco Bell, and wait until next week. We'll get another one. I think next week is December 7th, falls on Tuesday. Thursday night, I'm having dinner with a bunch of Pearl Harbor and World War II vets that are going back out to Pearl Harbor for the 80th. And I had to decline, man. It was a smart thing. I got invited to go. But how do you explain to your wife, hey, I'm going out to Hawaii for 7 days on this boondoggle, and I can't take you with me? You know, that I just couldn't do that. Yeah, that didn't work. That go over like a pregnant pole vaulter. So I get to work with the guys, pick them up at the airport. I'm gonna have dinner. I'll interview them. So if you guys are around on Tuesday night, I'm gonna do the interviews Thursday, and then I'm just gonna play it on Tuesday. So you guys will be able to sit back and listen to some World War II guys, which I always find fascinating. I love talking to those guys. Greatest generation.
Great people.
They earned that title, that's for sure. Well, listen, brother, you have a good one. Keep the sunny side up, and I will see you at an airport near you.
Okay. See you later.
All right. Hang on for a second. All right. Folks, thanks again for joining me with Tall Tales with Taco. Look forward to having you on another exciting episode. I just am starting to migrate this thing over to Apple Podcast, and I will soon be on Spotify. So I'm going to put as many episodes monthly on there as I can. So if you're able, do me a favor, go download them and check it out. Till I see you again next week. Adios, hasta luego, auf Wiedersehen. Tschüss, shishini, au revoir, domarigato gozaimasu, tano shinde, kudasai, ciao. Arrivederci, tashakur, assalamu alaikum, and that's it. You guys have a good one.